Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Devi Sesa Sanyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Our numbers seem to have thinned out a little bit. Does that mean some people had to go back to where they came from, or they're just fashionably late, or huh? Combination. Okay. Light of the Bhagavat. A couple of things I'd like to share at the beginning before we cover part 9. A couple of devotees have shared with me that hearing and hearing and hearing like this, it has had a profound effect in deep appreciation and deeper attachment to Prabhupada than before. You know, going through slowly and carefully like this, even like multiple times, how empowered and gifted and devoted was Prabhupada to the mission that Bhaktisiddhanta had given to him. Although his destination was Japan, he was speaking to the world right within the text itself. Is this League of Devotees term, an international perspective, appealing to the people who would attend this event, international perspective, which then became the International Society for Krishna Consciousness instead of League of Devotees. League of Devotees at the time was appropriate for his audience, this group of people in Jhansi. And then this group, League of Devotees, meant international and then international. So he's very focused on his mission. And by hearing from him, it naturally happens, as it did happen during Prabhupada's time, ongoing, it can happen in our time as well, becoming attached, profound appreciation and attached to our founder Acharya. And that's ISKCON. It's ISKCON. It was ISKCON then, it's ISKCON today. If we follow nicely, that is the instructions of our founder Acharya, and we follow and hear from him and hear from him. Yesterday in a conversation with Shyamasundar, he shared something with me that I had heard before, but I'll share it again because it's very nice. He said, Shyamasundar said, that Tamal Krishna Maharaj in a conversation with Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, the devotees love you very much. And it's true. I listened to it twice because there's a recording device that I have. It happened to play things twice. Yogi Bhajan was visiting Prabhupada in Los Angeles. No, excuse me, in Honolulu. And it turns out their headquarters, the LA headquarters, and Yogi Bhajan's headquarters are a short distance apart. I mentioned this earlier. In the course of their conversation, which was all about something else, Yogi Bhajan mentioned he had visited Prabhupada's temple, or the Los Angeles temple, the current Los Angeles temple. And there were two things he noted. The devotees are wasteful. I mentioned this already. And another thing he noted was, they have such love for you. You know, he's a love bomb person, kind of, Yogi Bhajan. But he couldn't create what Prabhupada created. He gave a little example of a teenage girl who was in charge of the gift shop, and Yogi Bhajan went into the gift shop to see what they had in the gift shop. And she didn't know who he was, but she was so cordial and so pleasant in her demeanor that he was taken aback. And so he asked her some question, I forget exactly, how did you get into this? And she just started speaking about Prabhupada with such love. She said, previously we're dogs. She said to Yogi Bhajan, previously we were dogs. And Prabhupada has lifted us up and gifted us with the highest thing. The mood, Yogi Bhajan was saying, her mood was so loving, it brought tears to his eyes. I mean, her love was so strong. This is, a man who's, at least from this discussion, he's principle-centered, but at the same time there was pride, very evident in his way of speaking, etc. But the softness of the love of this teenage girl who was in the gift shop in Los Angeles, didn't give her name, made him cry. So I'm sharing that because in the conversation with Shyamsundar yesterday, he reminded me of something that Tamal Krishna said, Prabhupada, the devotees have such love for you, which is true. And how do we develop that love if we don't have that love? Somebody here may be newer. How do you develop love for someone that is gone, or etc.? So it's through his words and the empowerment and the power to give that same gift to us today. And Prabhupada's reply to Tamal Krishna Maharaj was, after I have gone, their love for me will be demonstrated by how much they cooperate with one another. I'll say it again. Their love for me will be demonstrated by how much they cooperate with one another after I've gone. So he's, physically gone and otherwise present. And how is he otherwise present? Through sound, and specifically through his books. So this is a little message again about the importance of book distribution, to give the opportunity to people that have not encountered the truth, or a pure devotee bearing just exactly as this book is describing again and again, how the sages give this culture of the human spirit, or spiritual wisdom and spiritual realization. You remember that nice example of the brahmachari, by serving their teacher, doesn't find any inconvenience, like this metaphor of in the autumn season when the rain stops and the pools of water, reservoirs of water become clear. So similarly, the difficulty that one may undergo in doing something like gathering water for the teacher It's not an inconvenience because it's a gesture of love. And in reciprocation with that gesture of love, the teacher is very happy to give spiritual wisdom. And that's our life. It's the message of Light of the Bhagavad. It's the message that Prabhupada carried and brought to us. He lived it. His life was such an example of that principle. And he gave it to us, and our love for him will be demonstrated by how we cooperate with one another after his departure, which is now, and going forward in time, etc. Bhakti Churu Maharaj liked the idea and promoted the idea that like Madhvacharya is the preceptor, ISKCON has Prabhupada as the preceptor for generations and generations. He wanted, in fact, he promoted that idea. And it's, in a sense, is true. It's different, but in a sense, it's true. And how do we access Madhvacharya, or how do we have Sri Vaishnavas access Ramanujacharya, his teachings, and then those who represent his teachings, but he's the head of the Sri Sampradaya. Before him there were the Alvars, and so then there's Ramanujacharya, was systematically presented and propagated. So we have the same opportunity, is my message, and receiving, as we're attempting to do by hearing and remembering again, and there are opportunities to do so again after we've left. And hopefully the message will go inside, and then as we're distributing books during the marathon, there's messages, that little sound bites that we can share that are Prabhupada's message to the world. And this much at least, through sound, we're giving Light of the Bhagavad. And we can hand that to people and put it in their hand. Here it is. Please take. Or whatever literature you happen to be distributing, because in principle, it's so similar. Same source, same theme, same message. So let's move on to part 9. When we get to part 10, this is a little coming attractions. When we come to part 10, there's one verse that is not from Canto 10, Chapter 20. It's from 5th Canto. I mentioned this already. The little coming attractions is I'll be showing a little video that was put together by Antar Dweep Prabhu, who's the person who has the responsibility for constructing the chandelier in the TOVP. And there's a little video that he explains. It's his, Australian voice accent, but he's showing what's going to be in the Temple of Vedic Planetarium, the model. And again, I mentioned, but the focus, what Prabhupada picked up on, was the moon. So he selected a verse from 5th Canto that speaks about the moon. And there's a lot to say about the moon, but he picked a particular one, and it's paraphrased in text 48. You'll see when we get there. But it's on the theme of this and the next section, which is going back to Godhead. I mean, he's taking his audience by their ear or by their hand and helping them take shelter. Already we heard yesterday the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord through the medium of devotional service, or the cultivation of the human spirit. He's lifted, his receptive audience will be lifted. They may not understand, they may understand little, but the sound vibration is carrying them to Goloka Vrindavan. That's his gift back home, back to Godhead. So here's chapter 41, Transcendental Birth of the Supreme Lord. Now, how is he going to speak about that from scenes of nature? Let's see. In the clear sky of autumn, the beautiful moon among the beautiful stars becomes the cynosure of all eyes, just as Lord Sri Krishna is the central attraction in the Vrishni dynasty or in the family of Yadu. Now, what do his readers in Japan know about Vrishni dynasty and Yadu and even Krishna for that matter? But he's introducing the Srimad Bhagavatam, Light of the Bhagavat. Sri Krishna appeared in the family of Yadu. And since then, Yadu dynasty has been luminous like the moon in autumn. Queen Kunti's prayers, Canto 1, Chapter 8. Krishna appeared. One of the explanations, some people say Krishna appeared in order to give fame and glory to Yadu by appearing in the Yadu dynasty. So he's just rephrasing it. The appearance and disappearance of the Lord are similar to the appearance and disappearance of the sun. In other words, the sun is always existing, and it may seem that the sun is appearing, disappearing, but the sun is always existing. So Krishna's appearance, disappearance is similar. The appearance of Godhead in some particular family does not mean that he is limited by obligations to that family. He is fully independent and may appear and disappear anywhere and everywhere because he is all-pervading. Now, this is a philosophical concept. How can someone be a person and be all-pervading? Because persons are not all-pervading. Persons are somewhere. And the answer is by his expansion, by the Vasudeva expansion, which means he's everywhere, or Vishnu can also be understood to mean he is everywhere. So by his Vishnu expansion or Paramatma expansion, he's everywhere. And from everywhere he can appear anywhere. Very logical. He's already everywhere. And so he can appear here, he can appear there, he can appear anywhere. That's the meaning. Vasudeva means all-pervading. And that's so he appears as the son of Vasudeva, but he's already all-pervading. And he appears as the son of Vasudeva. Since God is all-pervading, like the power of electricity, he can manifest himself at any place within his creation, at his will. When Krishna is within, we cannot see him. But when Krishna is without, he is seen by everyone, although very few know him as he is. Now, the culture of Japan, while there may be some theism, the culture of Japan is largely nature and Buddhism. And of course, lots of fruitive activity. So how much theism is there? It's not what Japan is known for. Some, but it's not prominent. So with this audience, again, he's not just addressing the people from Japan, Even the conference attendees would be from all over, just like the organizer sent this brochure or flyer to Delhi. So from all over the world, but likely largely from Japan, or at least the Far East. So he's introducing Bhagavad teachings so that people can understand his all-pervasiveness, at the same time his Bhagavan feature. Everyone sees the sun every day, but that does not mean that everyone knows what the sun actually is. So making this comparison to then Krishna. Similarly, when Lord Krishna was present 5,000 years ago, very few could know what he was, what or who, meaning the source of everything and at the same time all pervasive. Quoting Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, one who knows transcendental nature, should be the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, or Arjuna. So this is a king with his many queens gathering around him and lamenting the loss of their husband, the king. But he has given all of us the option to go to him. And that's by the simple yet subtle principle of understanding his transcendental nature. And as the topic is the transcendental nature of his appearance and disappearance, like the rising and the setting of the sun. Then another Bhagavad Gita verse, fools deride me. When I descend in the human form, they do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Those some fellows at the bottom, some scholars apparently, looking at Bhagavad Gita and trying to understand or interpret Bhagavad Gita in their own way. It's not only not likely they're going to understand, it's not possible for them to understand. So whatever understanding they have is a misunderstanding, and they propagate it, and that goes on. When the verse in Bhagavad Gita says to deride Krishna, anyway, most of us don't read the kind of vilification of Krishna that goes on. But from time to time, Prabhupada would bring up the vilification of Krishna program that somebody would say. Sometimes authors, translators of Bhagavad Gita, and they're reading Bhagavad Gita, but they're not speaking Bhagavad Gita, or some of them would criticize Krishna, who write in Bhagavad Gita the statement, they're speaking about Bhagavad Gita and criticizing Krishna. It's weird. But as Prabhupada would say, this is going on. Again, we're not so much exposed to it because we don't read that stuff. Maybe in the past we heard some of those speakers, some of the persons in the room here, or know people that have heard those people that, and then you deal with those people that say bad stuff about Krishna in the name of Bhagavad Gita, etc., etc., etc. So this is going on, and they don't understand. Conclusion of chapter 41. There are foolish persons who take him to be an ordinary man, not knowing the essence of his transcendental features. Prabhupada wants to disclose his transcendental features in this book. Light of the Bhagavata is one of the many mediums for doing that. he can be accessed through the medium of devotional service, and then he's introducing this very elevated concept of love and separation through a scene of nature. At night in autumn, the atmosphere is pleasant because it is neither very hot nor very cold. The mild wind blowing through the gardens of fruits and flowers in Vrindavan appeared very much pleasing to all but the gopis, who were always overtaken by heartfelt sorrow in the absence of Krishna. So we honor and glorify the gopis, but they look pretty sad. Everyone else is enjoying the night and they're not. They're very sorrowful. So it better not become a gopi, because you have to experience sorrow like this, even when it's nice. According to authorities in disciplic line, when viraha worship is more palatable than sambhoga worship. Some people may be newer, and you may not know what those two terms mean. Sambhoga is meeting, viraha is separation. The emotion of meeting, the emotion of separation. More specifically, it's describing an emotion. So when we're in the material world, there's certainly separation, and we may not be feeling separation because there's not attachment. But if, from the previous verse and verses, when there's some attachment, then there may also be some feelings of separation. And that's the life of the gopis. This painting is meant to illustrate. Life's ultimate goal is feeling separation. Really? Life's ultimate goal is to be connected, and the reality is connected has variegatedness, sometimes meeting, sometimes separation. Here's one of the gopis hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, being attracted by the sound of Krishna's flute, and some feeling of separation from Krishna may be there. So this is a worldly sentiment. This is as below, then there's as above. Time seems to crawl when you miss the one you love, I miss you. So that's the mood of separation in this material world. And here it is described in the spiritual realm. In the mundane world, there is also some shadow of such viraha, but there is no lasting reality to such relationships. The feeling comes and the feeling goes. Now, it's not to say that the spiritual emotion of separation from Krishna is forever, because there's meeting and separation. It's described that even when the gopis are meeting Krishna, there's some anxiety that after some time he's going to depart. So it's enhancing their meeting by anticipating separation will come. It's a science, it's a subtle science, but when there's an object of love, a transcendental object of love, then there's this viraha bhav. So Prabhupada's words. We must first activate our dormant love of Godhead by following the prescribed rules and following in the footsteps of the authorities who are fixed in love of Krishna, or love of Godhead. Sadhana can lead to rag, or spontaneous attraction, and then eventually love. If we practice the viraha mode of worship, we can transcendentally realize the presence of the Lord more lovingly than in His presence. Now, what is this practice of the viraha mode? It's not something to be imitated, but it's something that we can understand that it exists within the perfected souls, the ragatmika souls, the perfected associates of Krishna, and looking up to them, appreciate the intensity of their love, which we don't have yet, and that's the practice. It's looking up to those who have that, and by that kind of association, that's the rag marg. One may experience the semblance of such emotions, but that comes when there's attachment, not just an emotion. A a bona fide lover of God can never forget Krishna, even in exchange for everything else. Nice painting. Okay, 3 more verses that covers our section text, or chapter 43. Perseverance in achieving the highest destination. Now, he already described the highest destination. Love is separation. And then comes, we're not there yet. Perseverance in achieving it. In the autumn season, all the birds, beasts, and men become sexually disposed. And the bull, the stag, male bird, man, and other male creatures forcibly impregnate the fair sex. So men can be lusty too, right? From our discussion the other day. A similar impregnation takes place as a result of devotional service to the Lord. Interesting comparison. Autumn season and the mating season. Devotional service to the Lord never goes in vain. Children, seen in Gurukula, children like our devotee children, they may not be in Gurukula, but they can learn mridanga, kartals, harmonium, and the process of kirtan. Never goes in vain. A little gain is never lost. A little progress is never lost, never lost, never lost. So we're engaged in devotional service, whatever our trajectory of spiritual evolution might be. Likely it's a continuation or a maturing of something that we previously did, and here we are today. And how far we progress is never lost. That's the idea here. Just at the right moment, the results of one's particular devotional service will come, even if one has no desire for it. What does that mean? It has everything to do with who's on the other side, the receiver of the act of devotion. Supposing one does some kind of mindfulness meditation and there isn't a person on the other side. There isn't a reciprocation. But when there's devotional service, whatever it is that we're not feeling or are feeling, there's someone on the other side. It's a reminder that this is the personalism feature of bhakti. And Krishna may or may not. That's the theme of this chapter. He may not give some indication of his acceptance of us and our service offering. And he may not. But he's accepting. That much we should know in principle and await Krishna to do with us whatever he likes. I know some people that don't want to wait. They have their expectation. Shri Shri Radha Nilamadava ki jai. And when you have an expectation, if it's not met, then you feel frustrated. And if it is met, you don't feel love, you feel something else. That's a semblance of. That is to say, love is available, accessible to those who don't have expectations. Or on the fruitive side, a desire. It's subtle, and it's like it's rare and it's elevated and all those nice things, but Prabhupada is indicating it in a gentle and subtle way right here. Devotees do not make business exchanges with the Lord, but the Lord, out of his own accord, fulfills all the desires of the devotees. So the painting is Draupadi has just been won by Arjuna in the Swayamvar of Draupadi, and he's coming to introduce to his mother, Kunti, Kunti, I have something very wonderful to share with you. And without seeing or knowing, the description in Mahabharata, she's on the other side of a door, and she says, whatever it is, share amongst yourselves. So how are they going to share amongst themselves? She's then got to marry everybody. And so they have to follow their mother because she's their mother. But how do all five of us marry? We have to keep our mother's word. But how do we marry all five of us, one lady? Vyasadeva made the solution. Do it because this was the pledge of Lord Shiva before she was Draupadi, that she would have several husbands. And so it was done. Even that wasn't their expectation. One must have good faith in the regulative principles followed by the self-realized souls, and one should not be doubtful about the ultimate result of such devotional service. He's saying the same thing from different angles. Of course, if one doesn't have faith, then it just going to bounce. But if one has faith, then we follow because this is the scriptural direction. It's something that's come from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So with faith in those three, we follow. And whatever happens, happens. And sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's that, without our expectation. Krishna is merciful, and the reciprocation is full of mercy. A devotee, therefore, should execute his devotional services with full energy, endurance, and confidence. He should perform his scheduled duties. He should be pure in heart, and he should serve in association with devotees. All 6 of these items will lead the devotee to the path of success. He's just taking teachings. Prabhupada is taking teachings from Rupa Goswami and other sources as he goes along, and paraphrasing them in simple language. Have you noticed that Prabhupada does that? My way of expressing this is that which is very elevated, he has presented in a pablamized form. Pabla meaning like baby food. So babies may not be able to digest something. So baby pablam is to prepare that something so that babies can digest it. So Prabhupada has problemized very elevated teachings. That one can write an essay or a book about what's on the screen right now, but he's just introducing it in a very simple form. We should not consider going back to Godhead a casual notion. We must take it seriously, as enjoined in the scriptures. So here's a little cartoon depiction where somebody's engaged in chanting and they're more than distracted. What was the 11th offense? So we should be mindful and focused and in the receiving mode of the mercy that comes from the practices of bhakti. Chapter 44. A well-trained prince versus many corrupt dacoits. Interesting subtitle. And the scene of nature. In the autumn season, all the reservoirs of water are full of lotus flowers. There are also flowers that resemble a lotus, but are of a different class. Among them is a flower called the kumuda, or water lily. When the sun rises, all the flowers but the kumuda blossom beautifully. Similarly, the lotus-like men take pleasure in the advent of a responsible king, but the men who are like the kumuda do not like the existence of a king. Far out comparison. So let's do it again. They're water lilies. You probably have seen lotuses. When the sun rises, they open, become in full blossom. At night, as the sun is setting, the lotus closes, and it stays closed until the sun rises again the next morning, like that. And there are others, also water plants and flowers, like a water lily, and they don't open and close with movements of the sun. The comparison is, similarly, lotus-like men, when there's a responsible king, they're very happy, jubilant. And those who are like the water lily, they don't like the existence of a king or a qualified person as one who can be followed. So many nice paintings. The lotus is a symbol in many cultures, certainly in the Orient and certainly in the Vedas. And then here's the other one, the water lily, kumuda. It grows up above the surface of the water, as you see, commonly. Sometimes it floats on the surface of the water, but it doesn't open and close with the rising and setting of the sun. In a monarchy, one man, sufficiently trained, was competent enough to conduct alone the business of the state. So Prabhupada liked monarchy. These, a qualified monarch. Why is monarchy abolished? Kali Yuga. Because monarchs weren't qualified. And because the king wasn't qualified, people wanted to, let's get another system of governments. And then so many things started to happen. This is a painting of, at the time of the Rajasuya Yajna, where Yudhisthira was being installed as the emperor or monarch. Narada Muni was there, Krishna seated on the throne. It was a big event. And there's Yudhisthira taking the opportunity of Narada's presence to ask him many questions. This is a whole section of Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this way, The illustration is meant to show monarchs are meant to be trained by qualified trainers or Brahmins. So we don't have qualified Brahmanas, we're not going to have qualified kings. And if we don't have qualified kings, a lot of it has to do with there aren't qualified Brahmanas to train them. In Kali Yuga, everything becomes topsy-turvy, as we saw, the Picasso painting, and whew. So this doesn't work, nothing works. It's Kali Yuga. Unless and until people can develop proper culture. Exactly the message of the light of the Bhagavata. Exactly the message. That's the starting point. So then the propagating of the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is for the age of Kali. In a so-called democratic government, corruption is even more rampant than in an autocracy or monarchy, the voice of the masses, democracy. Men who want to flourish in the guise of servants of the people do not want a good king at the head of the state. They are like the kumuda flowers which do not take pleasure in the sunrise. Isn't it far out how Prabhupada is using, I mean, he could just write a poem, but instead he's writing a book that takes this really nice metaphorical language and helps us understand truths of life from scenes of nature. This is the last slide for this morning. Ku means bad, and muda means pleasure. Persons who want to exploit administrative power for their own self-interest do not like the presence of a good king. How do you find one anyways? But they don't like it. And so replace the good king with something else or something else or something else that's also not satisfying. The principle that Prabhupada stuck with was the Vedic paradigm, the Vedic model, and promoted it and promoted it and promoted it from different angles. And hearing it, it's not only convincing, so therefore one can move in the direction of that teaching, but come to the position of Krishna's shelter, because the teaching is meant to bring us to Krishna's shelter. So the package is complete. The Bhagavatam is complete, and this little book, Light of the Bhagavad, is presenting many essential messages or essences from Srimad Bhagavatam in a little concise form. It's a nice book. And it's a real good segue into encouraging people to have Srimad Bhagavatam in its entirety in their home. Try it out. See if it works. Okay, it's almost 8:30. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you. We heard about the love in the mode of separation. So that is my experience is that is understandable to most of the common people.
It is or is not?
It is.
Okay.
What is not comprehensible for general public is Parakiya Bhav, which is very high to understand. So sometimes I have seen that people have asked about it to
They
me.
have what about it?
They've asked me about it.
Okay.
Like, how is that how is this justified?
How is it justified?
Yeah, and or how is it correct? Sort of
Okay.
a question. So I kind of stumble upon these questions and struggle.
My answer to this question is it depends. And here's what Prabhupada said in one situation. Somebody said, I am more moral than your Krishna. This is now Queens in Vrindavan, not Parakia. I have one wife and I'm very faithful to my wife and she's very faithful to me. So I'm more dharmic than your Krishna who had 16,000 wives. I'm better than Krishna. Not like, why, but I'm better. And Prabhupada's reply was, Krishna is the source of every one and everything. That means all women, not just his 16,000 wives, are his. And you have taken one of his and made her your wife. You're the debauchee. No, because the man was insulting. It wasn't just like, I'd like to understand something that's very high. He was vilifying Krishna and placing himself above Krishna. So he was, appropriately very strong. Again, it depends on the person, how you can answer that question. But the starting point, a starting point, is there is such a thing as a source of everything. And all of the Vedas are in search of that which is the source of everything. And there's different conceptions of what is that which is the source of everything. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So the highest conception is Bhagavan, which includes Paramatma and Brahman. And so the highest conception is the source of everything is Bhagavan. Do you agree? So that's, then comes the yeah, but do you agree? There's a source of everything, and ultimately that source of everything is a supreme person. Otherwise, where does person come from? There has to be a source. So there's a source. And then within that source is everything. So part of that everything is parakya. Otherwise, where does it come from? Where does the reflection come from? It happens in this world and it's immoral. And that's the reflection. Why is it immoral? Because there's one source of everything, not just there's laws or sensibilities that says something. The ultimate, what's behind that one is the source of everything. Let's keep our focus on that concept. Within that which is the source of everything is everything. So as that exists here and it's immoral, that which exists in the source of everything is not immoral, because there's no contamination that can touch the sun. For example, the sun purifies, the sun doesn't become contaminated. Therefore, my dear friend, don't apply worldly concepts, morality or any concept, to that which is the source of everything. Continue to look at that which is the source of everything through the lens. This is the source of everything, where there's no contamination. Well, wait a minute, my sensibility doesn't work, because what applies to me should apply to the source of everything. Sarvadharmam parajaja mameka. So so it depends on the person, how you speak. And if they're the challenging type, then now you know what you, well, at least one option of what you can say. You're the debauchee. And if you did like that, you're double sinful. And if Krishna does, he's double glorious. Let's take Krishna stealing. He's glorified for stealing. They got a nice name for him, Makhanchor. But he's stealing. And that's bad. But what's he stealing? It's his. It's not stealing. It depends on the person.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
And just
Yes?
if I can share, after listening all to all this,
Slowly and clearly, please.
sure.
This child in the hallway is louder than you.
Okay. So after listening to the lectures, I have a great appreciation, like such a high kind of thinking being shared to people who don't know anything. So great appreciation for Srila Prabhupada and his disciples.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I would like to express my gratitude to you through the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, simplifying, to in a digestible fashion to us, especially when you shared in the beginning the message, the gravity of the message through the conversation of Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. That is same, you later shared the chapter 42, serving the Lord in separation.
Mm.
So I really, appreciate that. Like we, as practicing devotees, should always um, continue the sadhana in a similar fashion. It is not that when we are around the devotees or we are in temple we behave some way, and when we are not around the devotees, so we just go low. So love for our Srila Prabhupada is shown when we practice, when, even though when he's here or when he's not there, here. So I really appreciate that, Guru Maharaj. Thank you.
Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. In chapter 42, there was one slide which said that the result of one's devotional service will come at the right time, even if one does not desire. I know you explained, but I still, it's not quite clear to me. Can you please elaborate on that?
This one? No. This one? Yes? No? Yes? No?
No.
We'll run out of choices.
It said the
Are you
result.
sure it's text? You sure it's chapter 42?
I might have missed the chapter number probably.
Huh?
43.
43. And to be responsive to your question, it's nice to look at what the slide says.
Yes.
At just the right moment, the result of one's particular devotional service will come, even if one has no desire for it. So you want to have that explained further. Yes? Well, there's different ways of explaining it further. We're dependent. Krishna's independent. He can do us what he likes because it's just reality. He can do with us what he likes. He's not ungrateful. He's not ignoring us or our service or our offerings or our sacrifices. But he's not obliged. If we do this, he does that. It's not business or mechanical. It's a relationship. And in that relationship, he may, on his own accord, reciprocate in a loving way. I mean, here's a simple example. You have children, and the children may have their expectations. And it may be or may not be that according to their expectations, you do what they're expecting. And it's not that you're insensitive or non-caring, or it's just your person, and you have some sensibilities of what's appropriate or not appropriate. And so perhaps when least expecting, you bestow something when they were least expecting, which is just fine. But it's not like it wasn't there before and now it's there. It's just, so what to speak of? You're an imperfect person, as am I, and Krishna's the perfect person. So he's at his liking. He can give remembrance, knowledge, or forgetfulness. Isn't it? I'll just give a recent example I just went through. I was trying to remember the name of a certain person from way back in history of my service. I couldn't remember the name, couldn't remember their name. I sent a little note to somebody, do you remember their name? And they didn't reply. And then all of a sudden, not when I was trying, but just all of a sudden, the name came into my mind. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just a little thing. Remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. But everything is coming from that same source. And whatever it is, it's in their hand. And Krishna is not ungrateful, but he's not obliged to do, to give remembrance of that name. When I wasn't even trying to remember it, just boop. So it's a relationship. Indelible, even if I forget, Krishna won't forget, relationship. And in his own way, in his own time, in his own everything, on his own terms, he'll reciprocate because he's loving. And if we want forgetfulness, he'll also reciprocate in his own way, in his own time. We're all connected. Just knowing or not knowing is the question. And then the variegatedness within the relationship. It's on his terms, not ours. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have a question like, no, we often hear from, reading the books like, no, Srila Prabhupada, the devotees who express like, no, their deep appreciation, like, no, how Prabhupada has uplifted them and everything. So myself, like, no, whenever I contemplate on, like, no, write letter or something, that is the only time I feel like, no, how, devotees have like, no, helped me come out of the practice more and everything. So how do
Which mode? Practice?
to say that like, no,
Come out of which mode?
no. So like, no, think in a way that because of the devotees, I was introduced to Krishna and like no, I was shown and everything.
Welcome.
Okay, so I just want to know I mean, it is only at the time when we share a realization or like no, write a letter or something. So how do I like no develop that deep love and affection and also like no that dependent humble mood of how Krishna, I mean, devotees have helped.
Small question. Sadhu Sangha is a short answer to any how-to question, not only this one. And then you can start unpacking, what does Sadhu Sangha mean? But Sadhu Sangha is the principle. It's how bhakti begins, it's how bhakti grows, it's according to Chaitanya Charitamrita or Lord Chaitanya teachings to Sanatana Goswami. Even at the topmost stage, it's imperative. And then the strands of what that unpacked Sadhu Sangha looks like is going to be whatever it looks like. It's going to be customized for each of us. But it's the principle. So find the sadhus, and particularly sadhus that you can disclose your heart to and enter into a nice exchange with, and go further, go further. Don't close your heart to that sadhu sangha principle. Do you know some people? I know some people that their heart is closed. They're in the path of bhakti, but their heart is closed. They can't receive that, the humility principle that you spoke about in your question. It's locked. That's sad. And then sometimes those people can hear from somebody, selective somebody, and then it closes again, even to that somebody, because they forget, because, it's just material tendency is very strong. The material tendency means I want to enjoy. That's the material tendency. It's so strong, then, blocks sadhu sangha. So, a nice mood of service. It's like the question somebody asked, and Vijay said, "Go on Sankirtan. How do you become humble?" It's the principle that we're very tiny, and proof of that is we're not in control, and so many things happen that we're not in control. We're not in control. We're not in control. We're very tiny. We're very tiny. We're really tiny. Not only scripture says, experience says we're really tiny. And then something is great. So what's that something? And so if you're thoughtful, then you can become humble and keep good association. With that humility and good association is a good combination. Adau Shraddha Tatak Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya Anarchana Vritti. So yes. Pass the microphone behind you. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your wonderful realization. My question is, in this world of duality, a mango, if we keep it in a basket, which is spoiled one, it spoils the other mangoes also. So why nature, when we do so many good things, I'm not talking about myself, people do so many good things, then one bad things, when it comes, they forget all the 99 good things they've done.
Well, nature doesn't do that. Their mind may do that, but nature doesn't do that. Nature doesn't impose that upon anyone. However, depending upon the mode, darkness can be, an obsession. Again, there are different natures, and there are different things behind someone's present manifestation of nature, and something gets triggered and they get stuck, filled with lamentation and sorrow and hurt, loneliness, etc. Negative stuff can be obsessive. Doesn't have to be like that, but it can be like that. So what to do? Sadhu Sangha. Stay in good, even if it's what your description. Stay in good association, and people can lift you up if you're down. But don't just be like an infant that needs somebody to always pick you up. But if that's the case, then stay in Sadhu Sangha. Somebody will help you. Scanning the room. Looks like we're ready to move on. Okay. You want to make announcements?